they're tense all the time. And they don't know it anymore because that's all we see all day long, don't we? Oh, now the awfulizing, and oh, now this is happening, and now we're scared. And there's just so much of that. When your body is stressed all the time, number one, you think you're normal. You think, oh, I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. And then when you do find out what it's like to relax, I realize my body feels a whole lot different when I'm relaxed than it does when I'm not. And if you're not relaxed, then all these issues that we see, health issues, are only worse. They only stay worse. And it's really hard to get well when you can't calm the system down.
This is the WellSpan Podcast. Welcome, friends. Good to be with you again today. My guest is a nurse by the name of Carol Ebert. Carol, I would describe as perhaps having a kaleidoscope view on life, but in particular on health, primarily because of her distance she's traveled. When I say distance in terms of career and the number of things she's done, and simply the duration of her career. She is coming up on, I believe, about 60 years in nursing. There isn't much she hasn't seen and encountered, and as she's moved through life and different careers, has really assembled a very interesting perspective on the life that you and I are living today that I think really offers some rich thought for many people. Whether you're thinking about wellness as a career, whether you're a nurse kind of feeling trapped, whether you're an individual looking for a way to kind of find an opportunity to explore, or if you're one of those people trying to help out someone and trying to figure out how to connect with them and move forward and get them to a better place. There's something here for any one of those and all of them. And so enjoy this conversation. Reflect on kind of where she's coming from, and don't be surprised by the energy that this woman has and vitality. As a secondary message to all of this is what life can be, well into what most of us would think is retirement years. So with that, let's get on with the show. Carol Ebert, welcome to the podcast. Good to be with you today.
Thank you, Scott. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's always interesting to talk to different people in different roles in health, and I think that's one of the things that quickly comes to mind of when I think about conversation with people like you, because we tend to think in a fairly mono view of what healthcare looks like until we get into it a little bit more and we discover there are many, many layers. And so our conversation today, I have no idea which direction it's going to go, other than I know there's lots of places we can take it. And you have some very, I think, unique perspectives and more experience. I'll offer that in terms of valued experience. I'm not being clever of saying, that you're more advanced in years. I'm genuinely saying you have a wealth of experience here for many purposes that relate to the conversations that we have here on the channel, and I think clearly apply with the work that you're doing. So maybe just to kind of set it up a little bit, let's go right to that point of where you were in the system, I'll call it, and you kind of had your big pivot. So maybe you can just kind of set us up with where did you come from? Where did you go to? And just kind of give us the lay of that land. And then we'll start to dig into both of those a little more.
Okay. Well, I did graduate as a nurse. So I was in the system throughout my training. And I remember upon graduation, I said, is this all there is? Am I going to be slinging bedpans the rest of my life? And I thought, somehow that didn't feel right. And so I said, I need to do something different. So I joined the Navy and I became a Navy nurse, and it was wartime, Vietnam era. And I'm sure my parents were freaking out.
Oh, no
What
kidding.
are you doing? And of course, I didn't think about that. I thought this will be cool. This will be different, without paying attention to what I was getting into. but I did 3 years in the service, and it was like baptism by fire. You're just thrown into a situation where you're working with people from all over the country. You grow up really quick. You're faced with casualties every day to take care of that are coming directly from Vietnam. Within 2 days, we get them. They would medevac 20 or 30 of them every day that we had to deal with. So we were really training well and quickly. Um, and I also,
Where were you based for that,
oh,
Carol?
and this, when you join the service and you say, this is where I want to be, and I want Great Lakes, or I want Bethesda, or I want, something cool. And I got Memphis.
Okay.
And I said, what is going on in Memphis that has to do with the Navy? And it happened to be a naval air station, so there was Marines there being trained. And so we were the health system, the health corps for them. So, and I showed up on base with 13 other young graduates right out of college. They were pivoting at that moment because of the war. All they had were these old nurses, the tough ones you see on the movies. And here comes this fresh meat and young nurses. And so it was like, oh, that's a shock to them as well as us. But in the meantime, I value that experience. It was the best. I'm so much better for having had that. I did have a patient that I married. We nurses have a tendency to do that sometimes.
Not
And
just in the movies.
yeah, not just in the movies. And we've been married 57 years, so it did last.
Wonderful.
But anyway, when I got out, I thought, I just can't go back. I did go back to the hospital, but it wasn't a fit, didn't feel right. And so I said, I wonder, I moved into anything else but hospital, and there was a job as a school nurse available. And that was wonderful because I could work with helping people stay well and healthy instead of sick all the time. And I could do a lot of education. I could well, I was the nurse for a school system, of course. So I helped the kids when they were sick, but I got to teach people to be well, the faculty, the community, the families. And that's when I got hooked on education. I said, this is interesting. This is something that I think I can do. But I was ignorant of what prevention and wellness was all about because in healthcare, we were in a silo. We fix some, send them out. This was all like, how do you prevent it? And I didn't even know what to do. I didn't even know I didn't have the tools.
Well, it sounds like as you're talking about it, it sounds like another time because of things that I raise up, like what's missing in really basic education today are things that like you're saying it was minimal then,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
from what I know, it's even less today. Like at least you
I
were given
know.
a bandwidth to make an effort.
Yeah. Well, and the good news was because I had come out of the military, I had the GI Bill, so I could go back to school and get money. That's what my motivation was.
Okay. Yep.
And I thought, well, because I work a 9-month contract and I'm off during the summers, I'll just go to the university and take some health classes because I love health. And pretty soon, I was really into it and taking a lot of classes. And my mentor, who was a nurse practitioner in the school system, she said, why didn't you just get a master's in health education? And I said, oh no, I'm not smart enough for a master's degree. I don't know where I got that.
Yeah, the old self-talk. Yep, sure. Yep.
Oh my God. And I think it's because both my father and brother were like the genius mentality. And
Hmm.
I always felt, oh, I'm not
Right.
that smart. So she laughed at me and said, just go do it, would you please? So I did. And what happened then was with that degree and my nursing background, then I went right back into the school system and became a health teacher. And I was fortunate enough to implement a curriculum that was really hands-on, really good for kids to learn from instead of lecturing and a lot of activities, a lot of fun. And so I enjoyed it. They enjoyed it. And then we decided, we were in Colorado at the time and decided, we really want to live in the country, but it's too expensive to buy land in Colorado. Let's go to Wisconsin, where I come from, and land is cheap. That was our motivation. So we came back here, and actually we ended up in Minnesota, right across the Mississippi River. And we got some land, and it was at the time, you'll like this, $100 an acre.
That's a nice round number.
Now it's like
100 an acre. Yeah.
right now, a parcel across the road from me sold for 17,500 an acre.
Yeah.
So things have changed.
Yeah.
But we became country people. And I did get a job as a health service director in a college, in Minnesota here, because I had that degree, that health ed degree, and I had my nursing degree. And I had also done a little side job in the college health service where I was living in Colorado. So I was a perfect candidate for them. And so when I applied, they said, "Oh, we've already closed the search." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm your person and you have to see me and talk to me." So they flew me out and I got the job because I think when I was younger, I just said, "I want this and I'm going to get it." And I did. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always ways to persuade people, right, to do things against what they were planning to do, which is clearly part of what you do already. And and it's hard to deny ambition in terms of enthusiastic ambition.
True.
That's basic behaviors, and how do we influence, but also how do people respond? So I think that's good. You recognize that earlier, and clearly nothing like a little bit of practice and reinforcement to encourage you for many years to come, right?
I do get enthused. And
Yeah.
when I want something, I'll do what it takes to make it happen. I have other stories about that too.
Yeah, well, and that's a kind of jumping forward here maybe, but that's one of the really important things that I try to have conversations with people and my students is where are you going and what do you want?
Mhm.
And it's not, most people will talk about, well, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. No, that's not what I'm asking you. That's a very different
Yeah.
question. Is like your life is usually about going somewhere,
Yep.
and there's probably some things you're going to have to do to get there, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
We that doesn't go away just because we turn 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or 90.
Nope.
And but yeah, we don't necessarily coach people all that well on planning for the next 10 years or so.
Exactly.
And so tell me about kind of that point when you kind of I guess really moved into the wellness space where you kind of stepped away from kind of having all that around you. Where were you at in your career to kind of start to do that?
Yeah. And when I was working at that college, which was in Minnesota, when I was hired, they said, there's something going on over in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, at the university there, health service, and it's called wellness. I didn't know that word.
Hmm.
And you go find out what it is and bring it back to us. I
And
said,
what era are we in here?
we are 70, 77, 78,
Okay.
19. Okay. So I drove over there, and what they were doing was brilliant. The health service director was a physician who had been teaching health classes to kids for years at the Y camp in upstate New York. And he said, "We're going to start a wellness movement. There's another one of those. We're just going to do this." And so he started in the health service. He set up what was called a cold care clinic where they don't have any little stations set up, and you come in, the students. They take their temperature, they look in their throat, they write down their symptoms, they decide what was wrong with them, and then they stop at the window and get cough syrup and whatever else they need. But they did it on their own. They made their own decisions. They were empowered. And that
Hmm.
was the core focus of wellness is empowerment, self-empowerment, being in charge of your life and your health. And I thought that is so brilliant. So I brought all of their little things back and did them on campus and taught the kids in the dorms and I also started talking about wellness within the community because it was new. And I invited one of their top dogs in the wellness, the beginning wellness movement. I brought him in and he did a keynote in the town. And so I started this pocket of wellness. But once again, people did not know what that was. So it was like, and still often do not. But that was the kind of work I did at the university. And then I decided I'm done. I need to move on. That's the other character trait I have. I last about 5, 6 years in a job. Time to move on because I'm bored, basically bored.
I can relate.
So what I did was I applied for a big medical center, which was in Wisconsin, La Crosse, Wisconsin. And they didn't have any openings, but I put my application in. And like 9 months later, they called me in for a job. It was I was reluctant to go there. Number one, it's a medical center, and I'd already parted ways. But they also were talking a little bit about prevention and wellness, maybe in the future. And they needed a nursing in service instructor. I said, well, I can do that. And I see there might be a future. So I took the job and stayed in my lane for a while. And then they started wanting to do the wellness. And so I just jumped in with both feet and started saying, hey, you could do this and this and this. And so we just started to have full-blown wellness in a medical center. We were doing programs, community, business, employee, really just going for it. And I had the kind of boss that left me alone so I could explore and develop. And so that was like gold for me. I had that gift for probably 15 years. And the other thing was in the meantime, the wellness conference, that first annual little wellness conference, today is 55 years old and it is the premier wellness conference of the world. This is where people go if you want real wellness. And I was connected to them all those years. I would either present or exhibit or be on the board or something. Always staying in that connection because that was feeding me more and more of what I needed to be a wellness professional. So, so
And sorry, what conference is that? So it's still running today, you said,
yeah,
right?
it's called they just merged with WellCoa, but it was called the National Wellness Conference, NWC. They are now merged with Wellness Councils of America. S- Probably for survival, you know how that
Sure,
we
sure.
got to support each other, but been successful all these years, all these years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a. I think all of us have seen the growing trend, even if we haven't been in it, right? In terms of the
Right.
familiarity with wellness is far more common now than it used to
Oh, yeah.
be.
Everywhere.
Not necessarily that people understand it particularly well, but
Right.
hopefully they'll understand a little better by the time we get done our conversation.
Yeah.
And so you did that for 15 years.
Right. And then the reason I stayed that long, because that's way past my expiration date, because I had a visionary boss, like I said, that
Yeah.
just left me alone. And but then he left and things changed and I became more contained.
Again, but being there too.
Yeah. And I don't like being contained and I don't
Yep.
like sitting all day entering data in a computer on my programs. And it was just like they weren't using my skill set very well. And I was really getting very stressed, frustrated. And my body was starting to react and I started getting carpal tunnel syndrome. I was getting neck and shoulder pain, and how they dealt with me was, well, let's fix your chair. Let's ergonomically fix your chair first. Then let's refer you to a doctor. And of course, they want you on muscle relaxants. And then they did refer me to a psychologist because, of course, if you're not getting better, it must be all in your head. And they even gave me a book on how to live with pain. And I'm watching this above myself saying, this is not nurse wellness. This is not Carol Ebert. She's active and exercises and is very exuberant and never has stress. And now she's a wreck. Okay, that's time out now. You got to go.
Yeah.
And I know my story is not unique.
No, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking, I served my time in corporate, and that was one of the things that, in terms of what were common chronic conditions, common among people sitting at a computer all day long, and the things that we would ask them to do or encourage them to do um, were clearly minimal. I find the less time I spend at a computer in a day, the happier I am and the more productive I would say I am. But yeah, things like if I'm not quite right a little bit, like my wife and I both had something recently, like almost the same day where I felt like I've had carpal tunnel starting to come in. I said it wasn't quite set up right and different, and just I don't spend much time. My back gets sore, and so yeah, it's yeah, figuring out how to do it better sometimes is about how to do it something totally different. Now, I have the
Yeah.
ability to do things totally different. I don't have to spend any time. Well, I can spend very little time. So I'm here by choice and
Yes.
for conversations like this that are good. And I can sit back and relax and have a conversation with you. No carpal tunnel to worry about. But yeah, it's a problem that clearly I saw as organizations were not well equipped to deal with. Right, they
Mhm.
were looking for all the usual kind of, well, I'll call them band-aid approaches to that you've labeled some of them here. So it's
Yeah.
a common one, I'm sure, still that has not
No,
probably haven't made much progress on it at all.
no. I hear it every day.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what was interesting? And the other thing that happened was I just quit. Now, I've never quit without something else, plan B, but I was so fed up, I just quit. And I said, I'll figure it out. I'll just figure it out. And so I leaned back into my wellness world. I know a lot of people in wellness because of the National Wellness Conference. And so those that I know well, were saying, you know what, we're all wanting to do our own freelance work, if you will, but we need each other for community because you can't do it alone. You
right.
really have to. And so I said, well, that sounds really good. And can I come along? Because I don't know what I'm doing right now. And to be honest with you, I had a nurse coach me at that point because I really felt lost because I lost my self-esteem and my status and who everything that I had built all those years. It was like now I'm nobody. Nobody's going to love me anymore. I was this whine. And this friend of mine, she said, well, listen, let me practice coaching on you because I'm going to be a coach. I said, I don't know what that is, but go ahead. Coach me. And it was amazing within 3 sessions with her because all she was doing was asking questions.
Right.
And I was coming up with answers. And by the time 3 sessions were over, I was like, wow, I know exactly what I'm going to do next. And I've got this plan and I'm ready to go. And I remember saying this to her, how did you do this? Because it was profound. And she said, I didn't do it, you did it. I said, I need to learn this skill. So I did get trained as a wellness coach as well. And for a while I was training other coaches. But that communication skill is so valuable. I don't know why we don't have it in all disciplines as students are coming along, that they learn how to communicate like that.
Yeah, well, what you just talked about there kind of ties back to a little bit which I mentioned earlier, but It's something that I figured out when I was teaching adults, some of them with medical backgrounds, and realizing I don't have answers for most of your questions. Um, and I also don't think I need to, because from what I can tell, most of us, most of you, as in an audience, you know the answer that's right for you. You just need some help organizing your thoughts around it. And again, where is it you want to go
Yeah,
and why? And no one can answer that for you, but it does require some structure and discipline. And that's what I think which you just talked about so nicely, was that's really what a great coach is able to facilitate, right? They're
ex-
not there to answer the question. They're there to facilitate the
right.
things in you, or if you don't know, again, to raise the question that you can go figure out.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. You hold space for them to just
Yeah.
process it
And
out.
watch it suddenly, like the flower just, the
Yeah,
plant
you could,
takes off, and just you watch it grow, and you
yeah,
kind of, maybe help it with a little bit of pruning, a little squirt of water here and there as an
yeah,
idea. But
right.
yeah, they're doing all the work, which is what you want, right? Because that's really the whole, everything we talk about with wellness or preventive health is really, it's about empowerment.
It is. It
There's
is.
so much people can willingly do
Hmm.
once they understand what the opportunities are for them, and kind of get pointed in the right direction. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I love it when my goal with them is they learn to coach themselves. And I can start hearing it when they say, I could do this. That's a great idea, because they're starting now to come up with stuff. And ultimately, when I would work with them, they'd come to the point where you don't even have to ask me anything, Carol. This is what I did,
yeah.
so they're on their way.
Yeah. And I think that's a key difference that maybe isn't understood as well as it could be, is the difference of working with adults. I'll
Mhm.
say mature adults versus young adults, or certainly children, in the
Yep.
case where they are just sponges trying to take it all in. A lot of
Mhm.
it's new for the first time. In adults, in particular mature adults, there isn't much new. I describe it as like it's a 5,000 piece puzzle thing on the table, and they've got some of the pieces put together. They got a lot of pieces put together, but it's not quite going together right. And
Right.
sometimes they just need another set of eyes to say, are you sure that piece is in the right place? Because it may not be the right one, might be a different one that goes there. And
Yeah.
that suddenly frees up some other things for them to figure out on their own. And that's
Great.
really all you did,
Yeah,
is
I know.
make some small notice. But yeah, it's really leveraging the intelligence and experience that we have. I gave a class last week, and I forget the number. I said, I think it was on talking about diet. Great
Okay.
example of kind of humility that is important, I think. I said, between us, I think we have 7,500 years of diet experience. I'm not sure there's a whole lot I'm going to be able to tell you,
Good framing.
but let's kind of talk about it as, collectively with that. So yeah, so the whole idea, so where I'm trying to take this is this notion of wellness and wellness coaching for people who haven't done it. And I think it's almost to say, you, it sounds like your goal is to take people so they don't need you anymore, to get them
Right.
essentially up and going, which is great. So maybe let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what that experience is like for um, for someone or a client when they start wellness, and how does maybe even from the first engagement of how does that work, and it kind of take us through some
Yeah.
examples of some a journey. I don't know how typical it is, or maybe everyone's totally different. You tell me.
Yeah. We're all unique in our own way. So how I start with anybody actually is, and this comes from the world of wellness, is let's look at you as a whole person. You are not a kidney and you're not a lung and you're not that. You're a whole person. So you have different facets that are going to contribute to your overall well-being. So coming from National Wellness, they had a six-dimensional model of spokes on a wheel. And it would have been social, occupational, spiritual, physical, intellectual, and emotional. So if I'm going to work with someone, then I say, well, let's take a look at this wellness wheel. Very simple. And why don't you rate yourself in each one of those pieces of the pie? And when they're done, they've got a visual now of, oh, I see where the work needs to go. Or, oh, I'm doing pretty good here. So you're given a positive and some areas to work on as well. But it's framing it so that because what happens is people want to come at it from their own viewpoint. It may not be from mine, obviously, but if I have this in front of them, they can say, you know what, I'm just going to start with that social thing. I don't think I get out enough. Fine, because ultimately we're going to get to all the other pieces when we start having our conversations. I don't care where they start. And it may look like, well, why didn't you start? You want to lose weight. Why didn't you start with diet? But they really want to start with looking better to get out socially. So that's what I do with everybody is start with something like that, wellness wheel, because of the education that comes from it and the insights. And then I always have that as the framework of our sessions, and I can always refer back to it and say, well, you know what? You went over on this, you're working on this, and you said you're going to go on that. Well, what about that? Do you want to hold it there and leave it and we'll go over here? Because I'm trying to hold their agenda in place so they don't wander all over the place.
Well, so that actually leads into what the first question I wanted to ask you. So, do people tend to migrate to the areas where they have the most comfort or the least comfort? And we could frame that as where they have the least opportunity because they've already mastered it so well and they
Yeah.
want to spend even more time, or the ones that are scary where they have more anxiety.
My experience is they're going to go to where they need to do some work. They may not go to the lowest one.
Right.
They'll go to maybe a medium one,
Okay. Yep.
but they generally aren't going to where they already feel like confident.
Good.
So
Good.
that's kind of what I
Because that
see.
would be kind of difficult.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Right. Because you're
Oh,
just going
okay.
to
Well, you
avoid
want
the
to,
opportunity. Yeah.
but you know what? Even if they did do that, because you're in conversation now, you'd be surprised where it goes. Because the
Right.
more they talk, we reveal as we talk, and then I can say, "Hey, you just mentioned that. Do you think that would be worthy of looking at?" Nah, that's okay. All right, I just wondered.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. It's and so it really kind of goes at this when we say holistic. It really what that really says is we're going to look at multiple spokes on a
Right.
hub, or if you will,
Yeah.
and try to get them all kind of tensioned up at a
Yep.
healthy value. Not going to be perfect, but
Yeah.
we can't just forget things because that means we're missing out on opportunities, right?
Right. And the other thing, if you think of it as a wheel, if it's got all those indentations in the wheel, then it's not going to be a smooth life path. So
Right.
we can also say it in those words
Yeah,
too.
good analogy. And I kind of take it to say, and so if we're looking for a long journey, you're heading out for a
Yes.
long journey. You
Yes.
don't want to head out knowing the wheels are out of balance and it's going to be
Right.
bumping all the way along, right?
You bet.
Yeah,
More problems if you do that.
a nice smooth ride. Um, how do you how do you view, or what are your thoughts on maybe some of the what are what are the biggest challenges you see people facing? Kind of, is there anything kind of routine? I know that you said everybody's unique, and that's certainly true. But are there common themes where we kind of see where you're seeing? Because I know society kind of has their views of certain things. But what's your experience with that? Or is it really all over the map? Right. Right.
Be a beginning step for help for just my observation of how people are living right now.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think I would say that um, you have the advantage again of having what I said at the top about more experience,
mhm.
right? So if we think about how we go through life, everything is like every decade we're all kind of seeing new things as society changes around us, but also as we look at the world differently,
Yeah.
right? But you've had enough time in this now. How many decades that
I'm
you
almost 80. I'm almost 80.
I'm not saying it, but you can. Um,
I know, I can't believe it.
y- but y- but but there is this reality of change, right? And so,
Yeah.
and I think you really hit on an important point. I first actually, what you're talking about, I had a physical experience with physical fatigue when I did endurance sport, when I did Ironman.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time because I was so busy going through the motions of training and work and things. And it wasn't until weeks later, after I'd finished my first Ironman and I truly took a break, that it was, I think, about 3 weeks later until I finally realized, wow, I haven't felt this much energy in a long time. So I was physically worn, but I
Yes.
see it now in all sorts of things. Unless you kind of get out and make a break from
Right.
routines, it becomes really hard to be sensitive to what your normal stress is like. Others can see it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But
Exactly.
it's often hard to see in ourselves, or we know it, but we don't want to acknowledge it because.
Right.
So I'll use that example as well. I know I'm tired, but my race is in 10 days.
And I'll rest later,
I'll
right?
rest later, right? Because I can't. I can't take time out now because I have a fear if I don't do this,
Right.
this 6 hour bike today, that I'm not going to be ready and all will be for nothing. And we
Yes.
write narratives around these things
Yeah.
for all sorts of examples that
Right.
are more everyday, that have
Right.
nothing to do with Ironman and physical training
Yeah.
still apply equal. That's why I
Yeah.
learned so much doing that about kind of aging in life and endurance in life, um, that I've been able to apply. So,
I just wanted to, can I add one more thing
yeah,
here?
absolutely.
Because it reminds me of when I left my job and I was so stressed and whatever, at carpal tunnel, right? They were going to do surgery. 9 months after I was away from that, doing a different thing, I noticed that I don't have any pain in my wrists. I don't need surgery. I don't have those headaches every day. I am sleeping better. So I could then see, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how bad I was until I felt better. And
Right,
I was out and I removed myself from the
right,
stress.
right. Yeah, and that's probably the hardest thing for people because they inevitably are feeling trapped,
Yeah,
which contributes to their stress, right? It becomes
right.
this compounding and confounding thing where they feel, and that causes to feel stressed.
Right.
And so just walking away isn't, mortgage payments and, kids
Yeah,
going off to college and all these things. Well, that all sounds really nice, but, there's expectations here of,
that's right.
that we've set, that we have made commitments. And kind of
Yep.
like I said with the race, like,
Yeah.
I've made a commitment. I have to deliver on a commitment. I don't have the option of just not going. Well, I could have on that, but things like, the real life stuff, mortgage payments and things are pretty
Yeah.
real.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I also felt that. I'm like, what are you doing? You're leaving your salary and your benefits? What are you going to do? I don't know. I'm too miserable to think about it. I just have to take care of me first.
so
That,
that I think is, if I look at, as you talk about your career, you have clearly been through this.
Yes.
of kind of stopping and saying, when you said, every 5 to 7 years of it was time to do a rethink and a pivot again. Um, and so it's funny. I was in a conversation just before we got on here with a similar type, totally different subject, but still the same issues around the more you are, not that you need to do it all the time, but the more you are willing to engage in significant change, the easier it becomes to identify when,
Yes.
execute on it, right? Not
Yeah.
change for the sake of change,
Right.
change because it's either needed or
Yeah.
because no, this is really the next opportunity and I'm ready to go face it. I'm not there yet,
Yeah.
perhaps, but I know once I do it, I'll get there. We give me 6 months, I'll have learned the things, right? And then
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah.
well on to getting bored.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so
Right.
so that's another area where I would imagine, people feel trapped. And so how do you walk them through that exercise if perhaps I'm thinking of an individual who maybe has avoided change, has
Yeah.
fear of change.
Yes.
That to me would be someone who would really, really benefit from having someone walk through it with them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, those that are afraid of change, I can still guide. I can still be a guide. I can still say, what if you look ahead, take them to the future? Well, like you were saying before, where are you going? What do you want? And then build a case for, let's take some easy steps, baby steps along the way for that person that's scared of change, reluctant to change. You can just give them some glimpses of things they could do to start moving in that direction without the fear of losing it all. Although today you can lose it all quickly. And that's another area that where coaches really need to land right now is people have just been fired or whatever. There is no um, easing out. It's abrupt. You're done. What are you going to do?
Right.
So there's a lot of variations here about guiding people into a direction for them for a healthier direction. But there's different strategies to use based on their profile, their personality type.
Yeah, yeah, and and I think as you're talking about this aspect, I see the exact same thing in health, where
Mhm.
people are frustrated with their health, and and while I'm not critical of people's choices, this is one where I tend to be critical, is they tend to fear looking in the right places. And
Mhm.
so when I say fear, that they're looking to friends or looking for online quick answers, as though these people understand health or understand the individual, and give guidance. And so what I see is people kind of going in this circle, or they're, it's like, they're bouncing from one thing to the next. And big surprise, nothing's working, and they're frustrated with the system.
Right.
Right? So so people who are in that situation, what would you be telling them that they really should be thinking about a different approach?
So for them, I have, I was pretty much all wellness, no more healthcare, all wellness. Then I kind of came back to the center. We need we do need both systems. So I like to let people know that um, I can be a really good navigator for you through both of those systems because I've lived through them. And we can determine together what would be the best course to take. But I'm also saying I'm going to have you lean more on yourself first and see what more can you do to be a better partner to these guys over here. And they often are not. They're often saying, my doctor said, so I can't listen to you. He said I should do this.
Right.
So that I kind of don't spend my energy on that. I spend my energy on the person who's frustrated and says, I don't want any more meds. I want something else. I don't know what to do. Okay, let me take your hand and we'll talk more about wellness. And these are tools that you can grow into and learn about. Here are some great resources. because I'm always looking for the best of the best. I'm not going to steer them in a direction that is not worthy. I'm smart enough to know when, nah, don't go over there. Try this. So I
Yeah.
can be a good guide or a navigator for them.
So we see people that are kind of troubled and are stuck, perhaps, who are looking for um, some way to kind of get out or break the chain. And then there's others who are maybe think they're doing fine, and maybe are or are not on track. So talk about what would be some of the ways to maybe look at it to say, like, are you on track with where you're trying to go? And we'll assume you know where you're going for this
Yeah.
conversation. But we're all kind of looking for, like I use lane markers on the road. Am I in my lane? Am I kind of veering off to the side? No, you're off the shoulder. um, but how do you kind of get that conversation going, and how do you shape that?
Well, if I were coaching, it'd be different because I'm just following their lead. But if my other part of me is that I'm an educator and I do a lot of health education programs for people to give them information, and it might be a group where I'm speaking about the sugar roller coaster or something like that. One topic where they said, "Oh, I want to learn about that." And they're sitting there listening. In the meantime, what I'm covering is everything that'll help you get remove those cravings and eat healthy and do exercise and stress management. I get to give them the whole picture of how you can get off the sugar roller coaster. And a lot of it really is about their diet because they're eating too much high carb, um, high glucose elevating foods. And when they learn that piece and they have a problem with sugar, then it's like, okay, I see that your glucometer shows you're always out of control. What if we try this low glycemic diet plan, meal plan, and see how it affects your readings? And so I always like going out with education first to attract the interested people, and then we can have the conversation because a lot of people are just there, that was nice, and they go on their way. But
Right.
there's always one or two that'll come up to me and say, "Can you help me?" And then they're open, they're willing.
Yeah, yeah, because I think the reason I ask it is that's to me is part of the empowerment piece. So in that example, it's really whether you're educating a coach or someone who wants to coach or kind of their client, it's still the same thing, right? We need to know again where are the guide rails and why do we want to know them? Well, to know that we're on track to where we want to go, or there's an opportunity for an improvement somewhere.
Yeah,
And you mentioned diet as one of them, and that's again something that kind of went back to earlier is what is really objective versus subjective. So when you ask someone, a professional, you're going to get an objective response versus if I ask a friend about something who has no expertise, I'm going to, right?
right.
I'm going to get a subjective response. And if there's one thing clearly wrong in our culture is we're far too reliant on subjective
Yes.
information around health. Health is very objective, which is good.
Yeah.
Right? We don't leverage it.
Right.
That's
Right.
the
Right.
problem.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can look at somebody, which you've clearly done all your career, and identify markers.
Yep.
We beyond just biomarkers that
Yep.
we can measure how well you're doing with things. So you clearly do a lot of education and have done a lot of education. So who are you educating these days?
Well, what's also interesting that, later in my career, after I left the healthcare system and I started working in the wellness arena full time with experts on nutrition, because they pointed out to me that I wasn't offering the right information on nutrition as part of my wellness world. And I thought I was doing everything the right way by wellness standards. But what I was missing was that the nutrition piece is a deeper subject than it ever was. Uh, knowledge-wise. We're learning so much more about the gut being the second brain and all this stuff. The fact that cells have to be nourished a certain way and they operate and they cause changes in the body when they get the right nutrition. All of that deep stuff, I wasn't doing that. And so it was like, I'm starting all over here, going into the cell. Um, and I thought, this is interesting because it's like a brand new career for me now, no, going into this zone.
Right.
And also the fact that here I am at almost 80, I'll say it again, and I'm like energized to learn new stuff again, like start all over, which actually I've been at it for about 20 years now. But it's like a second life in retirement, if you will. I should be retired, but I'll never be retired because I've got too much to do and learn and share. And so that really was remarkable for me to realize and the other thing that happened to me physically and emotionally, well, physically, even though I was nurse wellness and doing all those right things, all those lifestyle things, once I got involved here with this deep nutrition, cellular health focus, my health got even better. So I thought I was best. I thought I was at my best, and now I'm here because and it's all about because I am now valuing supplements, which I never did before because we don't do that in healthcare. So that was so interesting to me to say, what do you mean vitamins? I'm not going to do that. I don't have to do that.
Right.
And then I did, and then I got better, and I thought, oh, there's something here I need to know more about.
Those of us who come to talk to people like you and I, when I ask them, have your eating habits improved over the last 12 months? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes,
Mm.
because they're continuing to learn, because they're
Oh,
curious.
because
That's
they're
why they're
learning.
showing up, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's across the board, but in terms of those who are showing up,
Yes.
which is a recognition of I didn't know it all before. And I think
Yes.
you've really, even though you're in you're a healthcare professional, you know, been to college and trained in it, you still didn't know it all, and we still, right? And that's good, but it also is what gets overwhelming for people
Mhm.
because they are flooded with information. I think that's another place where to say where that's what why often when we can pair up with someone who has expertise, someone who knows us, at least
Right.
somehow more than just an internet page knows us,
Right.
and can ask us some questions and is truly qualified. It is a game changer,
Yeah.
absolute game changer. I've seen it over and over with people, and so it's a because it's not normal, right? Of things that are normal, we need to change, or when we confuse normal and common,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we say dysfunction has become common. It'll never be normal
Mm-hmm.
because homeostasis is what's normal for the human
Right.
body, right?
Right.
And I think this is too is our approach to health in general, would be much better to be normal than common. And so being uncommon, again, you've talked about being uncommon and switching your career paths over time. In your own journey of your own health, and you've had a lot of time to experiment on yourself,
You bet.
what's been maybe the biggest awakening or the biggest aha in terms of all the places that you have found some positive response or more than you expected?
Yeah. Well, like I was saying about the cellular nutrition, that terminology, which was brand new to me, it's deep science. It is deep science. And um, this company that I align with is so scientific and so careful and so smart that I felt like it was like a sponge with them. I want to know what you guys are doing. What do you mean that you can? What do you mean you built a healing hospital in Mexico and you're healing people from horrible things that they can't get help on in the States? That part was another revelation for me. And because it was like, okay, blow my mind, keep blowing my mind, showing me this, showing me that. What do you mean these people are living now and they got a death sentence from their doctor? Something's going on here. I need to know more. So that's when I made that shift into accepting, number one, that I didn't know everything anymore, and now I can start over and learn and use this. But I've also seen real changes. I mean, I have a husband who's got heart disease and diabetes and overweight. And so we're not supposed to tell our husbands what to do, but we're here for them. So I got him involved in using these supplements and this particular way of eating low glycemic, and he got better. And but what was interesting for him, and he's very hard to get better. He's a tough guy. But what he did was I had him so pumped up on these supplements. I mean, I was putting everything in him because I want to keep him alive, just like me. Um, but he started having chest pain one day, and he went into the doctor, and the doctor did, what they do, and he said, "Boy, you have four blockages." So, first of all, message number one, supplements aren't going to remove a blockage.
Right.
But the doctor said, "I'm surprised you haven't had a heart attack yet." And I quietly said to myself, because I've got them on these supplements and they're working, but they don't believe in that in healthcare. So I know my place. But that was interesting. He should have had a heart attack, and he didn't. So that's my evidence I look at. So he doesn't mind taking all this stuff because he's really feeling pretty good for 79. And again, knowing his pathway in life, had I not been a partner to him, he'd either be in jail or gone. But because of the things that, somehow we do help them, we ease things into them that we can. But the fact that now that I found something that really works, and that's the other message, is the problem with the supplement industry is it's not regulated. So it is a crapshoot. What's out there, I don't know why do you bother, but people do that. And I want you to have good quality always, or I wouldn't even be talking about this because I've seen the changes in people's health big time. I see it every day because I'm in their world. We're always with people that are using these products and saying, "Wow, you are looking good," or you that happened. We're hearing great stories. You don't hear that in healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a, and which, as you mentioned, they're never trained in it. So
Um,
there's no reason why we assume they should just know. And so while I don't feel the need or that healthcare needs me to defend them, that's not what they were trained to do. You
yeah.
can argue whether they should be, they clearly should be taught a lot more about diet at
Oh,
school than they are. I don't think anyone would argue that. And then the whole supplement world is, well, it's fast changing and fast evolving and then going through. So the company that you're affiliated with is Asana, is that right?
USANA Health
USANA.
Sciences.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there are the companies that are kind of the, I'll say the upstanding companies who have rigor and have science, and then there are those that essentially just are the copycats that show up that
Right.
very little, I know a little bit about the manufacturing on the side of those, and you just don't know what you're getting, right? Or
Right.
maybe
Right.
getting a deal.
Yeah, that's the problem. The label is really cute and
Yeah,
it's cheap and I can get two for one. I mean, I
right.
used to do
Yeah,
that before I knew that, oh, that's not right.
yeah, yeah. No, there are ways now that you can, again, I maybe on that I kind of say of places to try to go cheap. It's
Yeah,
never on food, right?
no.
Going cheap on food, no matter like whether it's the grocery store or wherever you are. I'm not saying you need to overspend, but it's just not a smart place to try to save money. There's a lot of places we throw money away on electronics and the latest things. Food really that comes with a price.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a saying. Actually, interviewing a one of the top mitochondria specialists tomorrow. We're with him, and he's got a saying. He says, "Cheap buggers pay twice." Really
there,
on the health side. So
there
if
you
you're
go.
trying to
yeah,
cut costs on things that directly
right,
relate to your health,
right.
expect you're going to pay more and a lot more later.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's I think the message clearly is there's a lot to do,
Hmm.
and and I look at you and say there's a lot you can do for a long time. This whole notion of and with healthcare, it's like it's a tough industry to be in. I don't care
Oh,
what
I know.
role you're in, and again, I'm not here to defend them, but I'll tell you that there are no easy jobs in healthcare.
No.
The system breaks a lot of good people.
Yeah,
It doesn't create many that weren't good already, and probably none. um, it's a tough environment to be in for a lot of reasons that I don't claim to understand, but
yeah,
having been in big corporate, I know it's not easy. So
yeah,
the fact that you've kind of done what you've done. So what advice might you offer to kind of others who are interested in kind of the health space and maybe want to be coaches or want to
yeah,
get involved or just want to be able to help their partner better, just the way you have?
yeah, yeah. Talk to me. Seriously, if you're not sure what direction to take, I think I, I'm going to echo what you said. Look to where you want to get at some point in your life, and then find someone that's doing what you want, and become connect with that person and find out what is the path. Because that I never had. I never had a model, a role model for me, other than my mother was a nurse. But that wasn't really my path, as I found out. So I think find somebody that you can communicate with that looks like something that you really are interested in, and talk to them. Say, what are you doing? How did you do that? What is your plan? What were your roadblocks? Kind of like when you're coaching someone, the same thing. What are your roadblocks? How do you get over those? Where do you end up? What's it all about? Because that I did find that helpful when I got out on my own, and I connected with one of my wellness friends. And I said, tell me about what your path was, because she was a doctor and dropped out. So I said, so I'm finding a mentor or somebody that you can get answers from instead of just assuming. And I look around and I see this is graduation weekend here, and all the nurses are graduating from college. And I'm thinking, I wonder how long they're going to last inside,
Yeah,
because they burn out quick or they just see the light and leave. That's one of our problems with nursing, is they get in there and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't sign up for this, taking care of all these machines.
yeah, yeah.
So really, I think you have to connect with people that are in the direction that you feel you want to go, and just see what they can offer you. And it's just like doing a little research. Why not? But I'll be happy to talk to anybody
Yeah, and
because,
I think people love to be asked typically, right? If they're being
yeah,
recognized for something they're good at. Now, not everybody has time, and that's okay. The worst, the worst. They'll say no, and you'll have a moment of embarrassment and disappointment. But
yeah,
there's also the upside is tremendous intel and insights, and also what not to do, right? That's what most of us in mentoring is, well, here's what I did, and here's why I wouldn't recommend doing that. You can do it if you want, but here's why I wouldn't do it again, having known or been through, the 5 years that I wasted on whatever some, thinking reality was something very different than what it is. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
and I think the other is for people if and this has been the case for me. It sounds like you and I are cut from the same cloth on this. Retirement was never a goal for me. It
right,
was just, and so I never understood people who clearly wanted to get out, but I think part of that is they just want to get out of the system.
yeah,
So maybe the good news is there are other opportunities beyond what you're doing now, whatever age you're at.
right.
Right? You can
You know,
finish out and do your retirement, but that doesn't mean you
yeah,
can't do anything else because you are a
yeah.
perfect living example of that.
Well, and the other thing, and this is why I value my nursing background, is if you're a nurse, there's a ton of different directions you can go into. So you can sample along the way, like I kind of did, and until you find where you really belong. And you can still be working. That's the joy of having a nursing degree is, you can always get a job, doesn't work out, try something else. So you are employable and you can do that research on your own and what fits for me.
Yeah, I would imagine it's one of the most leverageable skills of anything that we do in terms of the number of places you can go with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I
Okay,
value that strongly. Yeah.
if you're game, I'm going to hit you with a few rapid fire
Oh
questions
my
here. So these are just short, quick
oh
answers.
my gosh. Here we go. Is there one of those buzzers or
And
anything I
and
have
there's no
to?
right or wrong to any of these things.
Okay.
We'll get right into your personal life. What's the first thing you do after waking up?
I go downstairs, make a pot of coffee and drink a glass of water.
Yep.
And well, of course, I've gone to the bathroom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, bathroom
I
number
said
one.
personal, but yeah, I didn't mean yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
let's go to the
Good.
bathroom, then we'll
Okay.
think again.
Good.
Yes. Okay.
One wellness habit you never skip, no matter what.
No matter what, I never skip going to bed on time-ish.
Sure.
I
Yep.
have so many. That was
Yeah.
hard for me to
Yeah.
choose.
Yeah. Well, it just you've got
Yeah,
you've honed your habits. That's really normal.
my circadian rhythm is intact.
One thing people get wrong about aging.
That you're all done.
Yeah. Yep.
There's more to do. There's plenty more to do.
I don't know if you're a reader, the book that's impacted you most.
Ask and It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks.
Okay.
It's about the law of attraction.
Cool. I
Yeah.
like it. If you had to pick one of these three, movement, mindset, or meals, in terms of for encouraging people around wellness, movement, so activity, mindset, or meals. You can only pick one.
Wow, that's not right. That's
I
not
know.
fair.
I know.
But I guess you're going to have to go with mindset because nothing happens if you don't
That's where I
change
am
your
too.
mind.
That's where it starts, right? Because you're not going to follow through without the right mindset. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, yeah.
What surprised you most about yourself, kind of after leaving, I'll say, the traditional space and really went out on your own, more on the wellness world? About yourself.
About myself was that I felt I was finally, I didn't have to answer to anybody and I could start something today and implement it tomorrow instead of 5 years from now. So I was like the freedom that I needed it to thrive.
One piece of health advice you wished everyone followed.
I wish, I think if everybody would take the USANA vitamins, we would all be better. One piece that for me is a true piece, but I think just one, oh boy, again, I think we got to start by paying attention to what we're doing.
Yep.
Have a become aware of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's awareness is a great one.
Yeah.
Last one. What does thriving in retirement years mean to you?
Well, I'm having a good time learning more and meeting new people and helping people live longer and healthier. So it's like my work continues.
Yeah. And incredibly rewarding, I'm sure.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. It's just not what a lot of people would imagine retirement years could be, right? It was retirement years just referring to a phase. Retirement doesn't mean you stop living. It, it's kind of got some other associations to it. Well, Carol, this has been a wonderful conversation, as I knew it would be. You are such an interesting woman. I just
Thank you.
I I wish there were more of you in the world. You are truly outstanding, and I think a wonderful role model and inspiring for a lot of people to follow. In the yet the pointy end in the wake that you've left behind,
Yeah.
lots of room for people to find their way
Yeah.
in
Thank you.
areas that you're working.
Well, I do love what I'm doing, and I love helping others, and I'm glad that we could connect, because once again, we're still here. We're still doing it, and we need to show that off, like you are and like I am. We have to, because too many people just give up and don't see what could be.
Yeah, yeah. Life is full of opportunity at
Totally.
every age, right? That
Yeah.
it really never changes, and you have to see it to believe it. That's why I kind of experience it to believe
Yeah.
it. And once you get out of that pattern, it just venture out a little bit. It becomes quite empowering. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your thoughts with all of us, and wish you well. I'll put all the information for contacting you and your website and USANA down in the show notes. And people, please feel free to reach out to Carol. Clearly, she is very approachable.
Thank you. Been fun.
Hope you enjoyed today's show. Great to have you part of our over 10,000 strong WealthSpan community. Remember to subscribe if you'd like to learn about our upcoming shows. And as always, make sure you provide some feedback, whether that's a thumbs up or a comment, a question. They're all welcome. If you'd like to subscribe to our quarterly newsletter, you can do that at wealthspan.com. We're always looking for show ideas, or maybe you think you'd like to be a guest. Again, please reach out to book a motivational talk or inquire about our leadership workshops. Email me at info@wealthspan.com. Until next time, stay engaged, stay curious, and take good care of you and those in your care.